We look at the pandemic, first of all, and we look at alcohol sales going up by 27%. When liquor stores become an essential business, we have some kind of a problem in America. And that's what it was. The divorce rate went up by 12%, and so on and so on and so on.
Hey, how you doing? J-Man here, and welcome once again to the Launchpad Podcast. And I am so happy to have this gentleman on the show again. It's Dr. Robb Kelly, who's appeared on The Doctors. He's been on multiple podcasts, more recently the Eric Worre podcast, and some of those clips have garnered millions upon millions of views, very viral. He's an addictions expert, and we're going to talk about neuroscience and the mind, and he knows exactly what he's talking about because he's an addict himself, and he had lived on the streets. If you had listened to the previous podcast, lost everything, got it back, and wants to give all that back to you. Thank you for being on the program, Dr. Robb Kelly. How you doing?
Man, fantastic. Thank you for having me. Hey, guys, this is going to be a good one, I think.
There were so many things that you said last time that you were on the podcast, and I'll make sure to have that linked in the description, that were mind-blowing to me. And I want to get to some of those right now. And there's a lot of trauma that we all went through on the outside of the pandemic, and of course, during the pandemic. And you have mentioned numerous times how so much of addictions come down to childhood trauma. So associate the two, like the person that already went through the childhood trauma and then had to deal with this type of trauma, opposed to, let's say, the person that never really dealt with that family trauma before, but had to deal with what everyone just went through with the pandemic, and how that relates to alcohol and alcohol addiction.
We look at the pandemic, first of all, and we look at alcohol sales going up by 27%. When liquor stores become an essential business, we have some kind of a problem in America, and that's what it was. The divorce rate went up by 12%, and so on and so on and so on. But what we found with the pandemic is, pertaining to the trauma, is the isolation. So how do we get to somebody that to really freak them out, get them into anxiety, get lots of depression going, is we cover that identity and we stick them in a house or office for 3 months. We did our research on death row, and we found out that probably 90% of people on death row that got to the chair were insane because of the isolation. So I don't think we've seen the aftermath from that itself. I think we're just coming up to it now, and we're watching. But what's really interesting is you watch the correlation between the pandemic happening and what's happening now in the world. Even people not wanting to come out the home office back into the work environment, not because they've got comfortable at home, but because of that isolation. They're finding it hard to move back in to society. Childhood trauma is the gateway drug. This is what we found with our research and studies. So alcoholics are born and drug addicts are made. So the linking of the trauma and the lack of serotonin and the addicted personality makes the drug addict. The alcoholic is born. And what I mean by that is 3 parts of the brain differ in the alcoholic. It's a predisposition passed down from generation to generation. It's the only illness that you can pass down. You can't pass down heart disease or inflammation, and we'll get into that later. You can trace it back 3 generations. And what we found is alcoholics have what's called the allergy. We're allergic to the ethanol in alcohol. So trauma enhances that, obviously. With drug addiction, enhances hugely is the way we grow up, or lack thereof, situations around us. And then we look at the hypothalamus, the basal ganglia with the disease itself, and they differ from the normal brain function as we know it today. So gaining on the neuroscience behind the childhood trauma, that's why we call it the gateway drug. So what is childhood trauma? Well, here we go, guys. Sit down, get your pen and paper ready to write to J-Man and tell him that Dr. Robb Kelly was wrong. Anything less than nurturing as a child is child abuse. Now, nobody's to blame. No parents are to blame. I want to get that right off. But what we found, it's the slightest lack of nurturing. So you go watch the monkeys and chimpanzees for a year in the zoo like I did, and you see the nurturing and, you know, the care and the playful every single day. Now, I know we can't do that as human beings because we've got to pay mortgages and rent and stuff like that. But here was my biggest trauma. How many times my mother said to me, "Have I told you, Robert, you can't go to college like your brother? You're too stupid." Boom. That devastated me. And what we find is what's happening here, whether that be food, sex, relationships, struggling with jobs and, you know, stuff like that. And what happened here is almost impossible on your own to put together, but there's a direct correlation. Is this is why you're acting, because this happened to you.
Right. So it's all about how the brain recognizes trauma. And then you were saying that alcohol is not the addiction. You're not addicted to the alcohol. So what is the
Oh,
person addicted to?
well, the actual fact, when you look at alcoholism as a whole, alcohol has 1% to do with alcoholism. Okay, so it's not the alcohol. What it is the way the brain differs and the self-sabotage and the neural pathways and the way that the three parts I mentioned differ. They self-sabotage. Let's take the hypothalamus for a second. So the hypothalamus basically from birth tells us to drink water, eat food to survive. It's a survival part of the brain. If we don't, the hypothalamus tells us we will die. At a certain point of the alcoholic's journey, the hypothalamus turns around and tells the alcoholic to drink alcohol only. This is why we can go days or weeks without food or water, because the primary source of survival is the alcohol. So when we drink the alcohol, the allergy is the ethanol. That's why alcohol is 1%. So I never had a drinking problem, J-Man. I had a thinking problem. I had 90%-ish neural pathways that were self-sabotaging, which in layman terms means I had a brain that wants to kill me and make it look like an accident.
Right. And one thing that I was really shocked to find out, and it was from you, was the fact that alcoholism is hereditary.
There's
Now,
lots of controversy about this, J-Man, but I'm telling you from 30 years of research that that's true. There is an alcoholic gene that we pass down. Now, the latest addiction research shows us that lack of serotonin and environment and addictive personality plays into addiction. But alcoholism, you can trace it if you can trace alcoholism 3 generations back, which you can if you're a real alcoholic. If you can't, you abuse alcohol, stop it and get your life back. But there is a line of generations, and a real alcoholic, and when I mean the real alcoholic, I mean the guy that is allergic and also has the three parts of the brain that differ and find himself cannot stop drinking when he takes the first drink. You can trace it back. So there is a generational link with alcoholism that is not there with addiction. So you really have to trace it back. And what we find going through grandfathers is this saying. So be careful of this, guys, if you're tracing back. Grandfather liked to drink. Probably means that grandfather was an alcoholic, but he wasn't known back then, but he drank every single day. So again, we go back to the mapping of the brain pertaining to the generational pass down of this disease, which means that my basal ganglia is broken. The basal ganglia is kind of the repetition, strengthen, confirms of an action in the brain. A pilot needs 10,000 hours in the air, flying time to fly a commercial jet, for instance. That's the basal ganglia, picking that up time and time and time again. So they become second nature. What we found, the latest neuroscience research that we've done, is with alcoholics, it's broken. So if you can imagine a clock face, We relapse at 12 o'clock. We go into treatment. We get the girlfriend back. We get the job back. The kids come back. And at 10 to the hour, we self-sabotage and relapse for no reason at all. That at 10 till is linked to the childhood trauma. So unless we revisit the childhood trauma, we uncover, discover, discard of the scene of the crime, you will always relapse.
Yeah, alcoholism always just seems so present to me because it's happening in that moment, right? And the hereditary thing, even though I found that very surprising, I do remember doing some research on just trauma in general and how trauma can actually be linked back generations. And I
What you
found
have to
that.
look at there, what you have to look at is the learned behavior from parents. Parents can pass down the traits of trauma, depression. If mom's depressed, daughter might be depressed. But the traumas definitely can be passed down, even though it's not an illness or disease or anything. But it becomes a central nervous system and brain problem. But that can be passed down from generation to generation. Babies are born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. The rest are man-made. Wait till your father gets old. Oh my God, we can't afford that. You can't do. And all these pressures of anxiety causes that trauma. And trauma sits deep in the subconscious brain. So that when we wake up in the morning, the subconscious brain wants to run our day. That's the guy that wants to kill us. If you suffer from depression, childhood trauma, alcoholism, wants to kill us. The idea is to squash that subconscious brain and come from the conscious brain as we heal the subconscious brain. Now, a lot of people don't know this, so they kind of, oh, I've dealt with that trauma, or listen, I haven't got any trauma. I was never in a car crash. We're not talking about treatment center trauma. We're talking about deep psychological damage that was done as a child. One of mine was my mom and dad used to drop me at the age of 5, 6, 7 at a friend's house on a Friday to stay overnight while they went out drinking. Once the car left the driveway, we would play what's called the run around naked game, where I would have to get undressed and run around and they would chase me and tickle me. For years and years and years, even though I was a semi-professional bodybuilder, I would never take my shirt off. Never. Because that was a trauma from that. So from that stems all sorts of additional trauma coming off that action alone. So when we go back, it really is about, and again, there's no blame here, guys. It really is about finding out what you suffered from or what you went through from a child and healing that scene of the crime, healing them wounds, healing that person inside so you can be a productive member of society and successful. Everybody in the world has the potential to succeed, be successful, best dad, husband, wife, richest person, makes no difference. All the neural pathways there are already built inside the brain. Okay, so 300 neural pathways die every day. That's our latest research. What are we replacing them with? Because if you're replacing them with the trauma, even though it's subconscious, you will never succeed and you will always self-sabotage.
So what are some of the things that people can do to replace that with something obviously that's going to serve them opposed to tear them down?
So let's talk about changing actions and patterns. Everything's about patterns, guys. Patterns and math. Let's say you go out. Let's say me and you, Jay, we go to the seaside with a bunch of guys. We drink alcohol. We have a great time like normal people. We get back on the bus. Which seat you sit in? The same one you travel there. So that's an easy pattern to spot. So tomorrow morning, whenever you hear this, guys, we always do 3 things that'll change your life. First thing, when you get up in the morning, every single illness, every depression, every growth, every cancer in the body starts in a hypoxic area of the body. Now, for me, that was a big word. So that means no oxygen. We only breathe 40% at the most oxygen that we need. The only reason we feel great going to the gym is not the exercise, it's this in between the sets. We're getting the oxygen in. So, presence of oxygen, lack of disease. The reason why nobody's ever woke up laughing in the morning is lack of oxygen. On a normal circadian rhythm sleep pattern, between 2 and 5 a.m. in the morning is when the body is at its lowest. It's the less oxygen is there. So when we get up in the morning, the subconscious brain wants to run the day. Let's squash that out of the day for 24 hours, okay? I want you to take 20 exaggerated breaths in and out. Do 20 first thing. Brain's alert. Every single cell in the body is getting that oxygen. Now we're ready to go. Walk into the bathroom. Look into the mirror. Let's change the way we see ourselves. Stand 6 feet away from the mirror, because when we stand close to the mirror, we see all our blemishes. We go out to the world thinking that's what people see. But when's the last time you went to work and said, "Hey, Jimmy, nice to see you. How are you doing?" We don't do that. When you stand 6 feet, say, "I love you." Let's stack the subconscious brain. I love you 10 times. Easy. Sound stupid, feel stupid, lock the door so nobody can hear you. I love you. I love you. Get it done. The last thing I want you to do, guys, is let's change some patterns around, just like the bus. If you brush your teeth with your right hand, I want a left for a week, right for a week, left for a week, right for a week. That will permanently redirect neural pathways. That with complementing people, getting plenty of sunlight, eating correctly, get some exercise in, will change your life. And the more we do it, the more it becomes a working part of the mind. So all of a sudden, that with the trauma work, you start hitting the potential you was always meant to hit.
Mm. That's fascinating. And it's really just that simple to get started. I think people are always thinking the grand scheme of things. Maybe they're like 30 steps ahead, and the negative self-talk, that scarcity that you said comes from childhood, that this is going to be so hard, I'm never going to be able to do it. You know, my grandfather was a drinker, my father was a drinker. There's a lot of blame I find that's involved. And what do you say to the person, I mean, outside of get them to Dr. Robb Kelly, like when someone's at this point where there's someone that they love or care about in their life, they've done everything they can to try to help this person, but they seem helpless and hopeless. What can you do for that person from the outside other
Start
than just
dialogue,
get them
first
to
of
a
all.
specialist?
Yeah, start dialogue, start talking to these people. It's most people that at the back of the classroom that eat on their own, they're very quiet. They're the guys that shoot up schools. The guy that's always clowning in school and he's the high in the podcast. He's the most depressed person. Start talking to. We don't talk to people today because of the way society is. We don't compliment people today because we think they already know how good. Nobody knows, guys. I had a guy, the patient the other day, and he's like, "Dr. Robb, I had like 7,000 friends on Facebook." My answer was, "You just plugged into the wall." Start talking, start dialogue, start understanding what's going on. Get into somebody who's specializing, get into AA, get into NA, something to break up the pattern and just watch, because I get this all the time with parents who think their child is smoking weed or whatever, and the mood has changed. It's like, go search the bedroom. Oh, I would never do that because it says privacy. Look, if he's suffering or in a depressive manic state and you don't search his room and find anything, and you find him dead one day in that bedroom, who's to blame? You're both to blame. He's under your roof. Take action. Don't sit on it, guys. Oh, it'll be okay. Oh, it's just a phase he's going through. Start dialogue with your friends. Start dialogue with your children, husband, wife. Just be open. And of course, if you need treatment, there are millions of places out there that, probably better than us. And we would recommend, I mean, just start dialogue with somebody. You can always come and find me on Facebook or media, guys. I got a bunch of people that will speak to you all day long and never charge you a dime, but will point you in the right direction. I think we need to start a movement of dialogue. And of course, that goes on the back, J-Man, of what you just said about the pandemic, is everyone's isolated these days. People have forgot how to communicate. The communicative skills have gone. They'd be able to, go out into the public and conduct yourself and pay for the meal and stuff like that seems to be lack there of them actions. So I think the more community you build around you, the better. So goes back to the famous saying of show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Surround yourself, get your friends to surround themselves with people that compliment, that lift them up, that are positive all of the time. And you'll find that just like learned behavior as children, as we pick up traits from our parents, you pick up the people and the traits of the people you hang around with. So if you hang around with 9 depressed people, you will become the 10th. It's the same thing with positive people. There are bunches of groups out there. But again, what we do is, especially people who stay in the bedroom and get depressed, is the isolation and the learned behavior from caregivers is we think we are less than. So if you're at home right now and you're in that situation where you don't think you'll ever be blonde enough, tall enough, rich enough, or thin enough, everything's gone to crap. You'll never think you amount to anything to you because somebody's put that there. Babies are born with $1 million minds. Stop hanging around 10-cent minds, guys.
Now, with people isolating themselves so much and obviously highlighting the reason why conversation and dialogue is so important is to make sure that people don't drift off. But there must be some telltale signs, or maybe the better way to frame this question is like, what is an alcoholic? There might be people right now that are alcoholics and don't even know it, or you're hanging out with a friend that's an alcoholic and you don't know it. So you can't even address the problem. What would you consider to be like an alcoholic?
Alcoholic, ask them one question. When you take the first drink, can you stop?
Mm.
That's it. And if they say no, I drink until I pass out, or I go home, and there's a problem there, guys. Anybody that shows unkempt appearance all of a sudden, people who don't show up for gatherings, for nights out, for dinners, for lunches, people who isolate, that just don't look well, they're the guys that we should be bringing into our fold. There are billions of leaders out there. I see them on a daily basis, man, who don't think they are leaders. You are. So I'm not a happened by mistake or coincidence guy. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm speaking to you. You're the guy that could lead a friend, a relative, a boss, a employee out of the dark side into the light by just simply. There's a great story, J-Man, and this guy walks to the Golden Gate Bridge and he throws himself off and commits suicide. So they fish him out of the water and they find his address and they go back to his apartment looking for next of kin. What they find is a note on the kitchen table, and it read, I'm going to walk to the Golden Gate Bridge and commit suicide by throwing myself off, unless on the way there, somebody says hi, smiles at me, nods at me, high fives me. In that case, I will stop, turn back, and start again. I have a question for you guys. How many people have you walked past today heading to the Golden Gate Bridge?
That's powerful. That's very powerful. And I'm not shocked that you have the success rate that you do. I want to get into that. And I've heard it numerous times when you've talked about it, and you've been pressed on it sometimes as well. 97%, which is an outrageous number, because we've all seen the TV shows, right? Like interventions and whatnot. And you know that for the most part, whatever that person is addicted to is likely going to take them out, right? Or at least continue to ruin their life for probably the rest of their existence. And a family member or friend has to make that decision whether or not they want to stay in there and enable, or if they want to just break away so they can relieve themselves of the trauma. And I see you speaking so much from the heart, and also not coming from a place of scarcity. Your speech is always coming from a place of abundance. and moving people forward. How much of how you speak to us right now, how you're speaking to me, how you speak to everyone day to day has to do with the fact that you're able to help so many people and do it at a rate that is just near unbelievable.
I think you've got to have experience. I died twice on the streets in Manchester. I was homeless for a long time in Manchester. I lost everything, children included. I think that experience tells a lot. And I think when you come through and been in the industry as long as I have, there's a couple of things that you have to note with that 90, I think it's 99% now, I'm not sure, percent success rate, when the nearest to us is about 9%, is you can't buy our services, guys. I turned Britney Spears down for $1 million some 16 years ago. You have to pass an assessment. You have to be ready. You have to want this with all your heart. Then we can get you well. So what do we do to back that? Well, 8,000 patients on, we're still up there with all the records, but we back it with this statement. We offer a money back guarantee if you ever relapse whilst following our program. So you finish with us after 90, 120 days. If you continue to do what we taught you to do and you relapse, I will refund every dime. Nobody in the world says that. And here's why we can back that up. I'm very aggressive, and my team are very aggressive when it comes to this disease. It's not about the out. Stop concentrating on relapse prevention, alcohol, drug. That's not the problem. The problem goes way deeper than that. You can't take somebody away from alcohol. I passed 4 liquor stores on the way to work. That you can't do that. So something needs to change. And what needs to change is the way we think, our patterns, the 3 parts of the brain, the behavior, what we do. It's all part of the course. So I am very aggressive, as you know, J-Man, about this disease because it took my children away, because it killed me, because it estranged me for every single family member for the, and I was sick and fucking tired of watching people die inside the rooms, inside treatment, from lack of knowledge of what we're actually dealing with. So I only take 4 patients on at any one time. My other staff have people, we have 120 patients right now. I am here and I will fight your disease toe to toe until we get you to a place where you don't have to fight. It becomes a working part of the mind. You can fully recover from anything that you're going through pertaining to what we've talked about. You can recover from all of that. But the key is the neuroscience behind what we're talking about. It's not 90 and 90. That's not even an AA thing. It's a judge from Akron that came up with that. It's not a 30 days spin and rinse and back out again. It's not teaching relapse prevention. It's not staying away one day at a time from a drink. One day at a time is not even an AA thing either. The brain, 3 parts of the brain reset every 24 hours. That's where one day at a time comes from. It's like the knowledge of everything that we've gained, the aggression that we have, the passion that we have, the stuff we do to back our passion up takes us to that incredible percentage, which, we've had naysayers saying that's impossible. We've delivered the numbers and they've gone very quiet on us. I'm the guy that lectures at Harvard University. I'm the guy that does white papers for McLean Hospital, Oxford University, the government. I'm the guy that's been there and done it. I'm an old guy with a young attitude that wants to help people on a daily basis. That's my forte. I can't paint a wall, J-Man. I have no idea what's under my hood on the car. I can't even change the tire. But what I can do is this. And we do it very well. And every time I say our percentage, I say it for one reason. Because how brave and ballsy of me to offer a money back guarantee, which is absolutely insane. I say it for one reason. There's hope. There's hope, man. And there's life after everything we talked about. And what happens to our trauma, what happens to our past, what happens to our homelessness becomes our greatest asset going forward. Because I get it all the time. What do you know, Dr. Robb? I've seen your car and your house. What do you know about homeless? Check. Losing your kids? Checked. Being raped on the street? Checked. Got it all checked off. And what happens when you lead this life? I don't have bad days. I have better days than others, but I don't have bad days. It's when you aggressively help people, when you inspire people by always being uplifted, because it's not about me. It's about the guy heading to the Golden Gate Bridge. 4 years ago, my eldest daughter came back. 6 weeks ago, my youngest daughter came back after 30 odd years. That's what happens, man. Hey, you can't buy that shit. You have to believe. You have to believe that the human brain can be rewired, that neuroplasticity is real, that neuroscience today tells us a whole different story about depression, PTSD, alcoholism, everything we talked about. It's not what you think it is. You are not doomed for life if you are an alcoholic or have a drug problem. You are not. Everything is temporary. Most things pertaining to what we spoke about can be fixed. And it's real simple, and it don't take a long time. If you're in my office for 90 days, get the hell out of here. I never want to see you again. Get on with your life. Go help people. This is not a long deal. But I think the passion goes a long way, because there's a great saying, if you believe in what you're selling, then you'll sell more. We don't sell our services, but I have a passion and belief in what we do. We're doing it right.
Congratulations on the family. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Just come back from England, man. Saw them both. Saw my granddaughter. Just great stuff, man. Come back, and my life is unbelievable. But I'm only 63. I got a long time to go and a lot more lives to save and to help and to aid. And the other thing I'll add as well is every single staff member here are recovered alcoholics, recovered depression people, recovered PTSD guys and girls. So the place is buzzing every morning with enthusiasm, and we've just taken on what's called 9D breathwork therapy. It's absolutely mind-blowing. We're always looking for the new research, but if I can inspire one person listening to this, because you'll never see me on a podcast, J-Man, promoting my services. Hey guys, call this. Hey guys, do that. Well, I'm not there for that. I've got enough money, thanks. I've got enough patience, thanks. Come find me. If you want to speak, I'll speak to you all day long. But if we've inspired one person today, man, that's made my day.
Right. They say if you help everyone else get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. And it's nice to see this kind of come full circle for you, because I know obviously the family is everything. Now, we did touch a little bit on Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a fantastic organization, but it's two different things, right? And maybe you just want to speak on that. I don't know exactly where I want to go with that question. Maybe what is the difference in between what you do and what Alcoholics Anonymous does? Like, mainly, for the most part, what would separate the two?
Oh, we don't concentrate on the alcohol. We use neuroscience. We're professional people. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the book, it's not the meetings. That's the fellowship. You're getting things mixed up there, guys, if you think that is. The book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first 164 pages of that book, and I've studied Carl Jung, and I've spent 33 years in colleges and universities to be as educated as I have to do what I do, is the best piece of literature I have ever read pertaining to the recovery of anybody going through depression, alcoholism, addiction. It's absolutely beautiful. The fellowship, not so much these days. There's a lot of, back talking, leaders trying to take over. There's groups, there's clean, maybe not so much. But I got sober in AA, J-Man, and I spoke on the behalf of AA for 20 years around the world. I don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous anymore, but my book is always near me, and I read it every day. I stay close to God, and we use part of it because it's public domain, fourth edition, as part of our teachings. Is like this. the book talks about neuroscience back in 1930s.
Oh,
How
wow.
the hell did they talk about
Yeah.
psychic change? Well, psychic of the mind change of mind. There's neuroplasticity straight there. You know, they talk about all these things. That's phenomenal. So, you know, I'm a big aid of Alcoholics Anonymous, uh, getting people sober. But we are the medical side. We are the neuroscience. AQ 100 times more than that does. It touches on a step 4 of the childhood trauma, things in the past. What we found is with the new neuroscience that it goes way deeper than that. But how was they to know back in the 30s when they wrote the book? So it's the difference is like I will still sponsor people today if need be. If they come to me, I will never turn anybody down. Great organization. But you know, we're just on the medical side of things. So we kind of differ hugely from what they do. But if anybody came to me and said, "Hey, where's my first step?" You know, I think you have an alcohol problem. It would definitely be AA. Go to AA. Go to NACA. Go to the A's. Talk to people. Surround yourself with like-minded people, because that's what we found. Is we did a test where we got 20 people in a room and we paid them all to come in, have coffee, have some cookies. What they didn't know is we wired them all up, to see how their brain waves and central nervous system works. What they didn't know is we had 2 doctors, 2 nurses, 2 mechanics, 2 cleaners. When a mechanic spoke to a doctor, the brain activity was kind of 20-30%. When a doctor found a doctor just by accident talking to them, it went up to about 55%.
Mm.
When a doctor met a cleaner, but they were both being authentic, it spiked to 100%.
Oh, wow.
Authenticity is what you find in the rooms, in the good rooms. Authenticity is what you find in any groups around. If you're being honest, if you're sharing dialogue, if you're being really accountable to each other, the authenticity will take you through the roof. It's the highest form of a human being at its peak of happiness.
Wow. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, boom. It's all about education. And I didn't know that about Alcoholics Anonymous either, that the book was really the science, right? And then the fellowship is
Yes.
something completely different. Well, brother, I mean, I value your time. I really do. This guy, he's the real deal. He does have the houses and the cars. He doesn't need to be doing this, which is really the truth. So, from one person that values time to another person that I also know values time, thank you so much. And in regards to authenticity, I mean, it speaks for itself. I really don't need to add on to that. But if somebody does want to find you, um, Dr. Robb Kelly, how do they do so?
Oh, obviously, I spell my name with 2 B's. If you're listening and not watching, Dr. ROBB Kelly, go search me, go find me. I have books out there. If you can't afford it, message me. I'll sign it. I'll pay for everything. I'll send it to you. And here's the but. I love you, man. And I love this podcast. If you're in that place where J-Man and I talked about, in that lonely place, desperation, nowhere to turn, 214-600-0210 is my personal cell phone number. You text that number. Don't text it if you're feeling down. Text it if you're in that place. And here's what will happen. I will text you back accordingly. And I will arrange to give you a 20-minute pep talk on the phone or Zoom face to face that will change your life. And if it doesn't, guys, I'll send you $100 for wasting your time.
Yeah, man. Every time I talk to you, even if we're going back and forth in messages, I always feel better. I know that you've inspired someone to change 100%. And I will second what he says. Like, this dude is the real deal. He's not just speaking to you, he's speaking to your brain. That's that's the thing. He's speaking to your brain, and that's why it works. So, Dr. Robb Kelly, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you to the listener. I appreciate your time as well. And until next time, you take care, be well, and love simply because you can. And don't forget about that guy or gal on the way to the Golden Gate Bridge.